Okay, so in this video we're going to be going through all the basics to do with fractions. So we're going to start off with simplifying and then we're going to do conversions, so from improper or top heavy into mixed numbers. But yeah, so to start with simplifying, we're going to do a few examples. So with this, you've just got to look at both of the numbers in the fraction and think of a number that can go into those numbers. So for example, for the first one, 10 and 30. Now, if you really can't see what numbers go into it, the first thing to check is if 2 goes into both of them. Okay, so 2 does go into both of those. Now, when you're doing this, make sure that you're always dividing both of those by the same number. Okay, so both of them are being divided by 2. Okay, and if we do that, we would get 5 divided by 15. Now, 2 doesn't go into 5 or 15, so it can't be 2, but if we just gradually go through the numbers and see which ones can go into them. So 3 doesn't, 4 doesn't, but 5 does. So we can divide both of them by 5. Okay. So I'm going to put it underneath. So 5 divided by 5 would give you 1, and 15 divided by 5 would give you 3. Okay, now nothing would go into 1 and 3 other than 1, so this is our final answer. Okay, and you've just got to make sure that you simplify it fully, so make sure it's in its smallest form. Okay, so for the next one, we've got 50 divided by 75. So 2 doesn't go into 75, so that doesn't work. Now, looking at the last parts of the numbers, we've got a 0 and a 5. So that tells me straight away that 5 must be able to go into both of those. Okay, so 50 divided by 5 is 10. Okay, and 5 into 75 is 15. Now, these are generally non-calculator, so try and get used to doing your times tables and things like that. Again, looking at the last numbers, they're still 0 and 5, so that means that 5 must still divide into both of them. So that will simplify to 2 divided by 3. Okay. And next one, 120 divided by 720. So they both end with a 0. So that's telling me that I can divide both of those by 10. Okay, so if I divide both by 10, I get 12 divided by 72. Now, they're both even numbers, so that tells me that 2 goes into it. But I'm going to go a little bit bigger. I'm going to think 6 goes into both. Okay. So divide both by 6. So 12 divided by 6 gives you 2. That gives you 12. Okay, they're still both even, so it can actually simplify even more. So we can divide them both by 2. And we get 1 out of 6. Okay, and that can't simplify anymore. Okay. Now, the last one I've added in just because it's a bit of an awkward one, because normally we don't see decimals in fractions. So when you have these ones, the best thing is to actually multiply by number to stop it from being a decimal. Okay, and then once you've got that far, you can then just simplify it like what I've done before. So they're both 1 decimal places. So if I multiply both of them by 10, that will then get rid of the decimal places. So we're going to end up having 15 divided by 25. Okay, now obviously there won't always be 1 decimal place. If they're 2, then you're going to have to multiply by a bigger power of 10. Okay, so then we've got to this. Looking at both of them, they end with a 5, so that tells me that 5, wrong side. So both of them must be able to divide by 5. So 15 divided by 5 is 3, and 25 divided by 5 is 5. So the final answer is 3 out of 5. Okay, I'm going to move it just a tiny bit, so we're on the wordy part. So these are just some key terms that you've got to remember and also recognise. So the first one is improper, sometimes called top heavy. Okay, this is when you have a fraction where the top number, which is called the numerator, is larger than the bottom number, which is called the denominator. Okay, and I've written an example there. So for example, 7 over 5 would be an improper fraction, okay, because 7 is bigger than the 5 underneath it. Okay, Now when we have these sorts of fractions, sometimes they ask us to write it as a mixed number. Now although it says mixed number, it's actually a number with a fraction, which is what I've written here. So when a top-heavy / improper fraction can be written as a whole number and a fraction, and this is what it normally looks like. Okay, now just sort of one thing to say, if you do write these on a calculator, okay, don't click a number and then the fraction sign like that, because what happens is it just doesn't work. So if you look on here, there's like in orange, that's what the mixed number is. So you've got to click shift and then that one, and then it gives you all the boxes then to write it as a mixed number. Okay, because your calculator just naturally does whatever number at the front multiplied with the fraction, when actually a mixed number isn't that. Okay, so we're going to start off with converting. So we're going to go from a top heavy into a mixed number. So to do that, we look at the bottom, okay, or the denominator. We see how many of those numbers go into the top or the numerator, okay. So thinking of your 3 times table, 3 times 3 gives you 9, which is still under 10. Obviously the next one's 12, so we can't use that. So this tells us that there are 3 wholes, okay, as in whole things, whole numbers, okay. So 3 whole lots go into there, and that gave us 9, which meant that if we wanted 10, there must be 1 more left. Okay, so we write a little 1 there. Now the fraction, the denominator can't change, so it will just be 3 1/3. Okay, so 3 whole parts and then 1/3 left over. Okay, similar idea with this one. So again, we see how many 7s go into 15. So 7 times 2 gives you 14, so there's going to be 2 wholes. Okay, but we obviously want 15, we don't want 14, so we want 1 extra 7th. So it'd be 2 1/7. Okay, now a way of checking is if you multiply these 2 numbers together, so the whole number at the front and the denominator, and then add the number that's on the top or the numerator, you should get this number here. Okay, so 2 times 7 is 14, 14 add 1 gives you 15. Okay, so and for the last one, 10 divided by 4. So again, we look at the denominator, we see how many 4s go into 10, so it goes in twice. Okay, that gives us 8, so we actually want 2 more to make 10, so it'll be 2 out of 4. Now, if you see the fraction here, it can actually be simplified sometimes. So we can divide both of those by 2. So this is actually the same as 2 1/2. So the number at the front, the wholes, doesn't change, okay? It's just the fraction that will simplify. Okay, and the last bit we're going to do is the reverse of that. So it's similar to what I wrote for this one of when you're checking it. Okay, it's the same idea with this. So we've got 1 whole plus the 2/5 that is on the side. Okay, so 1 whole is the same as this, but so it's going to be split up into 5. Okay, so there's 5 parts there with the 1 plus the 2 parts that's there in the fraction. So in total there's going to be 7 out of 5. Okay, now if you just want a normal trick, what you can do is similar to what I've written here. You do the whole number multiplied with the denominator, or the number on the bottom. So 1 times 5 would give you 5, plus the number that's on the top of the fraction. So 5 add 2, which would give you 7. Okay, so similar idea with this one. The whole number, so the 3 multiplied with the 4 would give you 12. Okay, then we add on the 1 from the top of the fraction, so 12 add 1, which gives you 13. So the top number or the numerator is going to be 13, and the base will still be 4 because it was 4 in the fraction at the beginning. And the last one, so 5 multiplied with the denominator, so 5 times 10, which gives us 50. Then we add the number that's on the top of the fraction. So 50, add the 7, which is 57. So this is going to be 57 as the numerator, and the denominator doesn't change, so that will still be a 10. Okay, and that's how to do the basics of fractions.